There are gestures so small the world overlooks them entirely, acts so ordinary they seem to carry no spiritual weight, moments so brief they disappear before anyone notices. Yet heaven watches them with a different kind of attention, not the attention given to great accomplishments or visible sacrifices, but the attention given to love when it believes no one is looking. This is the mystery at the heart of the little way. Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever wondered why God seems moved by certain souls? Not because they perform miracles or lead thousands, but because of something quieter, something hidden, something the world would never applaud. Have you ever sensed that perhaps the truest gestures of love are the ones no one ever sees? If so, you are standing at the threshold of a wisdom that transforms everything about how holiness works. Sainte Thérèse of Lisieux discovered something the spiritual world had been missing, that God is not moved by the size of our offerings, but by the love that animates them. And she discovered 3 tiny secrets, 3 hidden gestures most people dismiss as insignificant, that move the heart of God more powerfully than anything grand or visible. These secrets are so simple they sound almost foolish, so small they feel irrelevant, so ordinary they seem beneath the dignity of serious spiritual pursuit. Yet they are the very things that made Thérèse a doctor of the Church. They are the things that turned her hidden life into a fire that still burns across the world, because heaven sees what the world cannot, that the smallest act done with the greatest love carries more weight in eternity than the greatest act done with hidden pride. This is the wisdom most people never discover, not because it is complicated, but because it is too humble to be noticed. The first secret, offering the moments. No one sees. Most people assume spiritual greatness requires visibility. They imagine holiness demands dramatic gestures, public sacrifices, or extraordinary circumstances that prove the depth of their devotion. But Thérèse discovered something far more radical. The moments that move God most deeply are the ones only He witnesses. Let me ask you something honestly. How much of your spiritual life depends on being seen, even if only by yourself? How often do you measure the value of your prayer, your sacrifice, your virtue by whether it feels significant, whether it produces results, whether anyone notices? This is not malicious, it is simply human. We want our efforts to matter. We want our love to be recognized. We want confirmation that what we offer is making a difference. But here is what Thérèse understood. When you offer love only in moments that feel important, you miss the very place where God waits most eagerly, because God does not need your grand gestures. He desires your hidden faithfulness. Thérèse spent her days doing things the world would consider meaningless, folding laundry in silence, bearing the irritating habits of a difficult sister without complaint, smiling when her body ached with tuberculosis, praying in darkness when prayer felt empty. None of these acts were visible, none were applauded, none seemed to contribute anything measurable to the kingdom of God, yet each one was offered with this hidden intention: for you alone, Jesus, not for recognition, not for consolation, just for you. This is the first secret. The moments no one sees, the patience you show when no one is watching, the kindness you extend without expecting gratitude, the prayers you whisper when no one knows you're struggling, the small sacrifices you make that no one will ever notice. These are the moments that pierce the heart of God, not because they are impressive, but because they are pure. They carry no hidden agenda, no need for validation, no desire for reward. They are love offered simply because love is owed. Even when no one is watching, even when nothing is gained, even when the act itself feels insignificant. And God sees them, every single one. Thérèse believed that God keeps account of these hidden offerings with a tenderness the world cannot comprehend. She once said, "Love proves itself by deeds, and how am I to show my love? Great deeds are forbidden me. The only way I can prove my love is by scattering flowers, that is to say, by never letting slip a single little sacrifice, a single glance, a single word, by making use of the smallest actions and doing them all for love." Notice what she says. Not great deeds, not visible acts, not achievements the world could measure. Flowers. Tiny offerings, small gestures, hidden moments. yet she calls them proof of love. Because in the economy of heaven, it is not the size of the gift that moves God. It is the purity of the intention behind it. And this is where most people make their mistake. They assume God needs their greatness. But what God desires is something far more intimate. He desires to be chosen in the moments where choosing Him costs something invisibly, where love is given not because it feels meaningful, but because it is faithful. When you fold the laundry with love for God alone, when you remain patient with a difficult person without anyone knowing, when you offer up your frustration in silence instead of venting, when you pray, even when prayer feels dry and pointless, you are doing something the world considers trivial. But heaven sees it as heroic, because these are the moments where self-love dies and God-love takes its place. This is the first secret that moves the heart of God, offering the moments no one sees, not because they are important, but because He is worthy. The second secret, choosing smallness, when greatness is possible. There is a temptation that visits every soul who desires holiness. It is subtle, it sounds noble, it feels like ambition in service of God, but it is dangerous. The temptation sounds like this: if only I could do something great for God, then my life would matter. Let me ask you something from the heart. Have you ever felt that your ordinary life, your daily responsibilities, your small sphere of influence, your hidden struggles, somehow falls short of what God truly desires from you? Have you ever looked at the saints who performed miracles, converted nations, founded orders, and wondered if your quiet life could ever measure up? This is where most souls stumble, not because they lack ambition for God, but because they misunderstand what moves Him. Therese discovered the second secret by refusing this temptation entirely. God is moved when the soul chooses smallness, even when greatness is possible. Notice the precision of this. Not when smallness is forced upon you, not when you have no other option, but when you choose it, freely, deliberately, as an act of trust. Therese lived in a time when many religious figures pursued extraordinary penances, dramatic conversions, public missions. She had the intelligence, the passion, the spiritual depth to pursue those paths. She could have sought visibility. She could have asked for important roles. She could have positioned herself for influence. But she chose something else entirely. She chose to remain hidden, not out of fear, not out of insecurity, not because she lacked vision, but because she understood something most people miss. Greatness in the eyes of God has nothing to do with visibility in the eyes of the world. She wrote, "Jesus does not demand great actions from us, but simply surrender and gratitude. This is the scandal of the little way. It suggests that the soul who washes dishes with love pleases God just as much as the soul who preaches to thousands. It suggests that the mother who changes diapers in hidden exhaustion offers a sacrifice as beautiful as the missionary who crosses oceans. It suggests that the person who remains faithful in obscurity builds something eternal that fame could never touch. Most people cannot accept this, because it challenges every assumption the world has taught us about significance. The world says, bigger is better. Visibility proves value. Influence equals impact. Recognition validates meaning. But Therese reveals the opposite. God is moved most deeply by the soul, who could pursue greatness but chooses littleness instead. Why? Because choosing smallness is an act of profound trust. It says to God, I do not need the world's applause to know my life matters. I do not need to see the results of my faithfulness to believe you are working. I do not need recognition from others to trust that my love reaches you. This kind of trust moves heaven because it is love stripped of all self-interest. It is faith that does not need proof. It is surrender that releases control. And this is where the secret becomes costly. Choosing smallness means releasing your need to feel significant. It means accepting that most of your acts of love will go unnoticed. It means trusting that God sees and values things the world dismisses. It means finding peace in hiddenness rather than striving for visibility. This is not passivity. It is not resignation. It is not laziness disguised as humility. It is the deepest form of spiritual maturity, knowing that your worth is not measured by what others see, but by what God receives. Therese understood that the soul who can remain faithful in smallness, without resentment, without bitterness, without secretly wishing for something greater, that soul has learned something most never discover. God is enough. Not God plus recognition, not God plus influence, not God plus visible success, just God. And when the soul arrives at this place, it becomes capable of a love so pure, so free, so utterly detached from self, that it moves the heart of God in ways the world cannot comprehend. This is the second secret. Choosing smallness when greatness is possible, not because greatness is wrong, but because littleness reveals the truest form of love. There is a subtle calculation most people make without realizing it. It happens in relationships, in work, in prayer, in sacrifice. We give yes, but we also keep track, not always consciously, not always intentionally. But somewhere beneath the surface we measure, how much have I given? What have I received in return? Is this effort worth it? Let me ask you something gently. Have you ever noticed yourself growing discouraged, not because love is difficult, but because it seems unreciprocated? Have you ever found yourself pulling back from prayer, from service, from relationships, not because you want to stop loving, but because you feel the imbalance between what you give and what you receive? This is the hidden wound inside spiritual life, and this is where the third secret becomes transformative. God is moved when you love without measuring the return. Therese discovered this truth in the most painful way possible, through relationships where her love was ignored, misunderstood, or dismissed. She loved sisters in her community who never thanked her. She served people who took her kindness for granted. She prayed for souls who would never know she existed. She offered her suffering for conversions she would never witness. And in all of it, she refused to measure. She refused to ask, "Is this worth it? Am I receiving anything in return? Does my love even matter if no one responds?" Instead, she asked a different question. Is God worthy of this love, even if I receive nothing back? This is the question that changes everything, because most people love conditionally without realizing it. We say we love God, but we expect Him to respond with consolation. We say we love others, but we expect them to notice, to appreciate, to reciprocate. We say we offer our suffering, but we expect to see some result, some fruit, some sign that it mattered. And when the return does not come, when the effort feels wasted, when love seems to disappear into silence, we begin to withdraw. Not dramatically, quietly. We stop giving as much. We hold back our hearts. We measure our offerings more carefully. Therese would say, this is the moment where love is tested, because love that depends on return is not yet free. Love that requires reciprocation is not yet pure. Love that needs to see results is not yet mature. True love, the kind that moves God, gives without counting the cost. It loves because love itself is the reward. It serves because service is an offering to God, not a transaction with people. It sacrifices because God is worthy, not because the sacrifice will be acknowledged. Therese once wrote, "When one loves, one does not calculate." This is the most challenging secret of the three, because it requires something the soul desperately resists, letting go of the need for your love to be seen, acknowledged, or rewarded. It requires trusting that love offered to God, even when it feels invisible, even when it goes unnoticed, even when it seems to produce nothing, is never wasted. This is where most people cannot follow, not because they lack generosity, but because they cannot release the need for validation. They need to know their sacrifice mattered. They need to feel their love was received. They need to see some evidence that their offering made a difference. But the little way asks for something more radical, love for love's sake alone. Not love to feel good about yourself, not love to earn spiritual merit, not love to be noticed or appreciated. Just love, pure, simple, free, offered to God whether or not anyone ever knows, whether or not anything ever changes, whether or not you ever feel the return. And this kind of love, love that gives without measuring, love that serves without expecting, love that sacrifices without calculating, is the love that moves the heart of God most deeply, because it mirrors His own love. God does not love us because we deserve it. He does not give because we reciprocate. He does not sacrifice because we acknowledge it. He loves simply because He is love. And when the soul learns to love this way, freely, generously, without calculation, it becomes capable of a union with God that conditional love could never reach. This is the third secret: loving without measuring the return, not because the return doesn't matter, but because God Himself is the return. When the soul begins to live by these three secrets, offering the moments no one sees, choosing smallness when greatness is possible, loving without measuring the return, something profound begins to happen. Not suddenly, not visibly, but unmistakably. A transformation takes place that the world cannot perceive, but heaven watches with wonder. Let me ask you something from the heart. What would your spiritual life look like if you stopped needing recognition, stopped measuring progress, stopped calculating return? What would your love look like if it was offered purely for God, with no audience, no reward, no visible result? This is what these secrets produce: a soul so free from self-interest that it becomes capable of loving the way God loves. Not perfectly, not without struggle, but truly. And this freedom, this interior liberation from the need for validation, visibility, and reciprocation, is the very thing that moves the heart of God most powerfully. Because in that freedom, the soul finally becomes what it was created to be: an image of love itself. Here is what happens when these three secrets become the foundation of your spiritual life. 1. Your prayer becomes simpler. You stop performing for God. You stop trying to impress Him with eloquent words or lengthy devotions. Prayer becomes what it was always meant to be: a conversation between the beloved and the beloved, simple, direct, honest. You no longer need to feel something in prayer to know it is working. You no longer need to see results to trust it matters. You simply show up, hidden, small, trusting that God sees, and that is enough. Therese prayed this way. She often felt nothing, yet she remained before God anyway, knowing that presence itself is prayer, that faithfulness itself is communion. This simplicity frees the soul from the exhausting need to manufacture spiritual experiences. It allows prayer to become restful rather than performative. 2. Your relationships become freer. When you stop measuring what you give and what you receive, relationships lose their transactional quality. You love people not because they deserve it, not because they reciprocate, not because it benefits you, but because love itself is its own reward. This does not mean you become a doormat. It does not mean you allow yourself to be used or mistreated. It means your love becomes detached from the outcome. You can offer kindness to the difficult person without needing them to change. You can serve without needing acknowledgement. You can forgive without needing an apology, because the point of your love is not to control their response. The point is to offer something beautiful to God through them. Therese loved the most irritating members of her community this way. She smiled at the sister who splashed dirty water on her. She patiently endured the one who made distracting noises during prayer. She showed tenderness to those who misunderstood her, not because it felt good, not because they deserved it, but because loving them was her offering to God, and in that offering, her heart became freer than it had ever been. 3. Your hidden life becomes sacred. Most people live as though only the visible parts of life matter: the achievements, the milestones, the moments others see. But when you embrace the little way, the hidden parts of your life, the parts no one sees, no one applauds, no one even knows about, become the most sacred, because those are the moments where love is purest: the patience you show in traffic when no one is watching, the prayer you whisper in the middle of the night, the small sacrifice you make without telling anyone, the kindness you extend in secret. These moments no longer feel meaningless. They become offerings. And offerings, Therese understood, are never wasted, even when they seem invisible. She once said that she wanted to gather up all the little sacrifices no one notices and present them to God like a bouquet of flowers. Each one small, each one ordinary, but together, a fragrance that rises to heaven. This is what happens when you stop dismissing your hidden life as insignificant. You begin to see it as God sees it, as the very place where holiness is formed. 4. Your suffering gains meaning. Suffering is inevitable, but meaningless suffering is unbearable. The little way transforms suffering by giving it a recipient. Instead of enduring pain with bitterness or confusion, you offer it, not because God needs your suffering, but because offering it makes you a participant in His redemptive work. Therese suffered intensely in her final years. Tuberculosis ravaged her body. Spiritual darkness consumed her soul. Yet she offered every moment, every cough, every sleepless night, every wave of doubt, for the salvation of souls. Not because she could see the results, not because she felt consolation in the offering, but because she trusted that nothing offered to God in love is ever wasted. When you learn this secret, suffering no longer crushes you with its apparent meaninglessness. Instead, it becomes an opportunity to love, to trust, to participate in something far greater than your own experience. 5. Your heart becomes unbreakable. This is the most mysterious transformation of all. When you stop depending on external validation, when you stop measuring your worth by what others see, when you stop calculating the return on your love, your heart becomes unbreakable. Not because nothing hurts, but because your security is no longer in the things that can be taken away. You are no longer devastated when your efforts go unnoticed, because you offered them to God, not to be seen. You are no longer crushed when people misunderstand you, because your identity is hidden with Christ, not dependent on human opinion. You are no longer paralyzed when your love is not returned, because you were loving for God's sake, not for reciprocation. This is the freedom the little way produces. A heart anchored in God alone, stable even when everything external is uncertain, joyful even when circumstances are difficult, loving even when love is costly. Therese possessed this unbreakable quality. The world saw a young nun who died at 24, but heaven saw a soul so rooted in God that nothing could shake her, not suffering, not darkness, not misunderstanding, not even death. Because her heart was built on a foundation the world could not touch, the hidden love of the little way. The question becomes, how do you actually live this way? How do you move from understanding these secrets to embodying them? Therese would say, start where you are. You do not need to wait for extraordinary circumstances. You do not need to create dramatic opportunities. The little way is available to you right now, in the ordinary moments of your current life. Start with this. Before you begin your day, make a simple offering. Jesus, I offer you every small moment of this day. The ones no one will see, the ones that feel insignificant, the ones I will be tempted to rush through or resent. I offer you my patience in traffic, my kindness to the difficult person, my faithfulness in hidden duties, my trust when nothing makes sense. Not because these moments feel important, but because you are worthy of all of them. Then, throughout the day, when you are doing something that feels meaningless, offer it as a flower to God. When you are tempted to seek recognition, choose hiddenness instead. When you are keeping score in a relationship, release the need for return. These are not grand gestures, they are tiny redirections of the heart. But over time, these tiny redirections reshape everything. Because the little way is not about doing different things, it is about doing the same things with a different love, with a love that sees God in the ordinary, with a love that trusts Him in the hidden, with a love that offers freely without measuring. And this love, this small, secret, unmeasured love, is the very thing that moves the heart of God. There is a paradox at the heart of the little way that the world will never understand. The smaller you become, the greater God can make you, not in the eyes of the world, but in the eyes of heaven. Therese discovered that holiness is not about expansion. It is about contraction, not diminishment out of insecurity, but hiddenness out of trust. Because when the soul becomes small enough, God can fill it completely. When the soul releases its need to be seen, God can work through it invisibly. When the soul stops measuring, God can use it immeasurably. This is the mystery most people miss. God does not need your greatness. He desires your littleness, not because he wants to diminish you, but because littleness is the doorway to union. Think of it this way. A cup can only be filled when it is empty. A vessel can only be used when it is available. A soul can only be inhabited by God when it has made room for him. And the three secrets of the little way, offering the moments no one sees, choosing smallness when greatness is possible, loving without measuring the return, these are the ways the soul empties itself, makes room, becomes available. Not through violence, not through self-hatred, not through false humility, but through love. Through simple, hidden, generous love that wants nothing for itself and everything for God. And when the soul learns to love this way, something happens that only eternity will fully reveal. The hidden life becomes the most powerful life. Not powerful in the world's sense, but powerful in God's. Because it is the life that allows him to work without interference, to love without competition, to move without resistance. This is what Therese meant when she said, "My vocation is love." Not love in grand gestures, not love that seeks visibility, not love that demands return, but love in its purest, smallest, most hidden form, the love that simply gives because God is worthy, the love that trusts because God is faithful, the love that serves because God is love. And this love, this tiny, secret, unmeasured love, is the love that moves the heart of God more powerfully than any achievement the world has ever celebrated. The final word. Therese died believing her life was insignificant. She had accomplished nothing the world could measure. She had never left her convent. She had never performed miracles. She had never converted nations. Yet within decades of her death, she became one of the most beloved saints in the church. Why? Because the hidden life she lived, the life of tiny secrets, the life of small offerings, the life of unmeasured love, had moved the heart of God so profoundly that he could not help but reveal it to the world. Her autobiography, written under obedience, became a spiritual fire. Her little way spread across continents. Her influence reached millions she never met, all because she had learned the three tiny secrets: offer the moments no one sees, choose smallness when greatness is possible, love without measuring the return. And if you learn these secrets, if you begin to live them in your own hidden, ordinary, unremarkable life, you will discover what Therese discovered, that the smallest gestures, offered with the greatest love, move the heart of God more than any achievement the world could measure. Because God is not impressed by size, he is moved by purity. He is not drawn to visibility. He is drawn to hiddenness. He is not won by calculation. He is won by surrender. This is the wisdom of the little way. And these are the three tiny secrets that change everything.